Midnight news coming to you live from Algiers. To the headlines. Algerian President Abdelmajid Tebboune announces his intention to run for a second presidential term. He asserts that this decision comes in response to the wishes of many parties, organizations, and young people. Next, 50 martyrs in new Israeli massacres in Gaza within 24 hours. Airstrikes hit Rafah, Nusayrat, Maghazi, and Khan Yunis. Over 60 martyrs recovered after Shuja'iyya incursion. And the Kremlin announces that Russia is considering measures to contain the serious threat posed by NATO, emphasizing that it is fully engaged in the ongoing conflict over Ukraine. Meanwhile, China strongly opposes the statement issued at the NATO summit in Washington. The outset Algerian President Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune declared on Thursday that he will run for a second presidential term. In his periodic media interview, President Tebboune stated that his decision to run again in response to the wishes of numerous parties, organizations, and young people. He emphasized that the achievements of the past few years are victories for the Algerian people.
موازاة مع هذا الواقع يتفق الملاحظون في الداخل والخارج، وهذا نادر ربما، على أن الوضع في الجزائر حاليا أحسن من ذي قبل على مختلف الأصعدة السياسية، الأمنية، الاقتصادية، الدبلوماسية. هل تحذوكم الرغبة والإرادة لمواصلة ما بدأتموه سنة 2019؟ حتى أكون مباشر، هل استقرت نية الرئيس عبدالمجيد تبون في الترشح لعهدة رئاسية ثانية؟
أعتقد أن نزولا عند الرغبة نتاع كثير من الأحزاب والمنظمات السياسية وغير سياسية والشباب نتاعنا، أعتقد أن آن الأوان أن أعلن أني سأترشح لعهدة ثانية مثل ما يسمح بها الدستور. إذا الشعب قرر التزكية أهلا وسهلا، وإلا أنا كنت قمت بواجب، يعني من جزء من الواجب، واللي يجي يكمل الله يسهل. بالنسبة لبداية السؤال، إذن الانتصارات كلها كانت انتصارات نتاع الشعب، مش انتصارات نتاعي أنا. الجزائر انتم تلاحظوا بدون ما ندير حوصله، لان مادام اعلنت رسميا عن الترشح نتاعي لعهده ثانيه تكون فيه لقاء ربما مع الصحافه للحوصله، ولكن الخاص والعام يشهد ان المداخل تاع الدوله تقوات، ان النزيف اللي كان في الخزينة العمومية انتهى، أننا استرجعنا ما كان ممكن استرجاعه من أموال، ووزير العدالة أعطى أرقام ملايير الدولارات اللي استرجعناها. اليوم فيه أكثر راحة للمواطن بالنسبة لصيانة حقوقه، وصبح يقوم بواجباته بكل فرح، لأن ولا يعتبر نفسه جزء لا يتجزأ من المجتمع.
Algerian President Abdelmajid Tebboune confirmed that announcing his candidacy for a second presidential term comes in response to the desire of many parties, organizations, and youth. President Tebboune expressed in his periodic media interview his pride in what has been achieved in recent years, especially with regard to improving state revenues and recovering embezzled funds, stressing that the Algerian citizen now feels a tangible improvement in his living conditions.
بقية الملاعب اللي
فيه كثير من الأمور اللي أنا فخور أننا وصلنا إليها. ما وصلتش وحدي، لأن وين ما تكون عملية جبارة مثل هذه راه فيه رجال ورجال ورجال ورجال. وهذاك علاش أنا من بداية في ترشيح 2019 قلت أنا مترشح تاع الجميع، الطبقة الشبانية والمجتمع المدني، وسيكون نفس الشيء بالنسبة للترشح للعهدة الثانية.
The Algerian president expressed his thanks to all the political parties which confirmed their support for his candidacy for a second term.
وشاكر كل الشكر على الثقة تاع الأحزاب اللي ساندتني، واذكرها جبهة التحرير، حركة البناء،
التجمع الوطني الديمقراطي،
جبهة المستقبل، صوت الشعب،
مختلف الأطياف السياسية الجزائرية
الديمقراطي، ومختلف راكم سمعت في تيزوزو البارح الشباب هذا يطلب عهدة ثانية وكذا. إن شاء الله نكملوا، لأن شوف الأخطر في مسيرات مثل هذه أنك تتوقف. لما تتوقف يعني ما وصلتش لبر الأمان، وما قضيتش نهائيا على الرواسب وعلى ما تبقى في الميليو دو جي كما يقولوا، سي لا بارتي لا بلو فراجيل. مازال اليوم فيه ناس زعامات تخرج من الشارع ويدعي كذا.
The Algerian head of state also expressed his hopes to achieve his goals based on his desire to continue leading the country by enhancing the power and status of Algeria at all various levels.
أولاً الجزائر مهابة الجانب، لا عسكرياً ولا اقتصادياً ولا علمياً ولا. احنا اليوم الحمد لله الكل معترف، الخصم قبل الصديق معترف بالنجاحات الاقتصادية تاع الجزائر. الدخل القومي ارتفع، أجور ارتفعت وما زالت ترتفع تاني من جديد إن شاء الله. الاستثمار عاود خدا المسار نتاعو، اليوم فيه ما يقارب 8000 رغبة استثمار عند لابي. هذه كلها خلقت جو اللي يخلي كاع الجزائريين وانا ما بينهم متفائلين مستقبل اخر اقتصادي ان شاء الله.
The Algerian president explained that his program during the second term is mainly based on completing what he has already been built and making Algeria safe.
أول مرة نوصل إلى تصدير خارج المحروقات. صبحنا نصدر الحديد بينما كنا نستورد الحديد، نصدر الإسمنت بينما كنا نستورد الإسمنت. نرجع للسكن اللي تكلمت لي عليه، السكن اليوم أصبح جزائري 100%. ما يكلفش كما كان يكلفني العملة الصعبة باستيراد الحديد، استيراد الإسمنت، استيراد الخزف، واستيراد الابواب والنوافذ.
يمكن ان نقول اذا ان برنامجكم الانتخابي للعهده الثانيه يرتكز بالاساس على استكمال ما تم بناؤه خلال العهده
استكمال وجعل الجزائر ان شاء الله في بر الامان على كل المستويات، حتى ربما يتسنى لكل المواطنين والمواطنات النزهاء مستقبلا انهم يطمحوا في تسيير بلد عادي. حاربنا الكوفيد وحاربنا العصابات سنتين، يعني العهدة هذه قلصت إلى 2.5 3 سنوات. ما فيش. العهدة الجاية إن شاء الله تكون فيه متسع تاع الوقت أكثر لترسيخ كل ما بدينا فيه من الناحية الاقتصادية، من الناحية العلمية.
At the headquarters of the Independent National Elections Authority in Algiers, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune withdrew individual signature forms for those wishing to run for the presidential elections on September 7. So far, the Independent National Election Authority in Algeria has counted 35 individuals interested in running in the pre-presidential election.
هي عملا بأحكام الدستور in accordance with the provisions of the Constitution and the Organic Electoral Law, and in accordance with the decree of the President of the Independent Electoral Authority, I have now, on behalf of Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune, proceeded with the withdrawal of signature forms to embark on the process of the presidential election for a second term, based on a proxy that he granted me to perform this mission, which is part of the legal procedures in force.
Arab and international media have widely relayed the news of the announcement made by Algerian President Abdelmajid Tebboune about his intention to run for a second presidential term in the September 7 election. Many international newspapers and news sites highlighted excerpts from the periodic media interview during which President Tebboune announced his candidacy, indicating that the Algerian president had ended doubts and speculation regarding his candidacy for the country's upcoming presidential election. And news on occupied Palestine in a few moments, so stay here. Palestinian Health Ministry announced that the occupation forces committed 2 massacres against families in the Gaza Strip, killing 50 people and 4 others, including a child in Rafah and Khan Yunis, during the past 24 hours. Medical sources in Gaza also said Thursday that the death toll from the occupation's aggression on the Gaza Strip has risen to 38,345 martyrs and 88,295 wounded since October 7, 2023. The same source emphasized that thousands of victims are still under the rubble and on the streets, where ambulance and civil defense crews cannot reach them. And a Zionist raid targeted a house in the Al-Zafran area of Al-Maghazi camp in central Gaza Strip. Missiles were fired at a house in the Nusayrat camp, while gunboats targeted the beaches of Al-Zahra city and the Nusayrat camp. Simultaneously, the occupation artillery shelled the Mughraqa area in the camp. And the spokesman for the civil defense in Gaza, Mahmoud Basel, reported that over 60 mortars have been recovered following the recent Zionist invasion of the Shuja'iyya neighborhood east of Gaza City. Basel noted that there are dozens of bodies still under the rubble, with estimates suggesting at least 50 Palestinians killed in the Tel al-Hawa area by occupation fire.
The occupation destroyed a medical clinic that served over 60,000 Palestinians in Shuja'iyya. More than 85% of the residential buildings in Shuja'iyya have been destroyed, leaving over 120,000 citizens homeless. We have documented testimonies that the occupation opened fire on residents despite providing evacuation routes. The presence of thousands of bodies under the rubble is causing the spread of diseases and epidemics.
The Zionist occupation army has forced thousands of Palestinians to flee Gaza City and move to Deir al-Balah in preparation for a new assault on the city. The recent massacres in Gaza City have resulted in the martyrdom of dozens of Palestinians. Amid artillery shelling and airstrikes, the occupation army penetrated the city, causing a large-scale displacement as residents attempt to escape the bombing. The occupation dropped leaflets demanding the evacuation of Gaza City.
We are heading to Deir al-Balah. Of course, we could not sleep all night due to strikes and terror and fear. They also distributed leaflets saying anyone staying behind in Gaza is either a terrorist or a member of Daesh. We, of course, were so scared, so we decided to head to my family in the south.
We've witnessed a lot. Many soldiers stopped us and kept searching us. They stopped us for an hour. It's torture. We left the Haider roundabout 3 days ago. We were besieged there. Many rockets were fired on us, and we were wrecked. I can't even talk. Our situation is hard to describe or talk about.
Hamas announced that it had not received any new information from mediators regarding the ceasefire and prisoner exchange negotiations. In a statement, Hamas accused the occupying forces of stalling to buy time and derail the current round of talks, as they have done in the past. The movement further emphasized that such tactics do not deceive the Palestinian people and their resistance. Iranian President-elect Masoud Pezeshkian has assured the Palestinian nation and resistance forces of his administration's unwavering support in their struggle against the Zionist regime. In a message to Ismail Haniyeh, the leader of Hamas, Pezeshkian expressed gratitude for the congratulatory message on his election victory and reaffirmed Iran's commitment to the principles of the Islamic Revolution. He emphasized that supporting the Palestinian nation against occupation and the apartheid Zionist regime is both a humanitarian and Islamic duty for Iran.
Iran considers supporting the Palestinian people and their struggle against the occupation and the racist Zionist apartheid regime a humanitarian duty and an Islamic obligation. It is an adherence to the lofty principles and goals of the Islamic Revolution. We affirm the continuation of the Islamic Republic of Iran's comprehensive support for the oppressed Palestinian people until they achieve all their lofty goals, regain their rights and liberate Al-Qudus. I'm confident that victory will be an ally of dear Palestine, a decisive victory from God. This is thanks to the historical steadfastness of the Palestinian people, the resilience of the oppressed, capable and powerful Gaza, and the heroism of the Palestinian resistance.
Into different matters now, President and Director General of the Algerian Sonatrach Group, Rachid Hashishi, praised the importance of the 5th Japan-Arab Economic Forum, describing it as strategic. In his speech at the proceedings of the forum held in the Japanese capital, Tokyo, Hashishi expressed or stressed that the event represents an opportunity to establish joint mechanisms aimed at ensuring the sustainability of relations and exchange in experiences in the field of clean energies, digital transformation, and security of energy supply. Hashishi also cited the Algerian-Japanese bilateral relations that go back more than 6 decades, embodied in the completion of major projects in Algeria, such as the Arzew refinery and the Hasirmel gas complex of Sonatrach, expressing his hope for continued cooperation with partners in Japan and also in Arab countries. And on the sidelines of the 5th Japanese Arab Economic Forum in Tokyo, the President and General Director of Sonatrach, Rachid Hashishi, discussed the partnership opportunities available between Algeria and Japan with the representative of the Japanese International Cooperation Agency. Sonatrach stated that the two parties are aiming to sign a memorandum of understanding to conduct a preliminary feasibility study for green hydrogen and solar energy projects. In Russia, President Vladimir Putin expressed his optimism about the continued development of Russian-Iranian bilateral relations under the leadership of the newly elected Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian. This came during a meeting between Russian President Vladimir Putin and the Speaker of the Iranian Parliament, Mohammad Bagher Kalibaf, on Thursday on the sidelines of the BRICS Parliamentary Forum, which is currently being held in the Russian city of St. Petersburg.
The relations between our countries are developing quite successfully. The presidential elections took place in our country quite recently. I want to express hope and have no doubt that the development of relations between Iran and Russia will continue to progress as it did under Mr. Raisi, whose death we all regret and mourn.
And for his part, the Speaker of the Iranian Parliament confirmed that Tehran and Moscow succeeded in confronting what he called the illegal threats to the United States and its allies, which affect the entire region.
We see how the illegal actions of the United States and their allies negatively impact our regions, but together Iran and Russia have been able to counter these threats and challenges.
Support for Ukraine surged during the NATO summit in Washington, where NATO announced military aid for Kiev and the US pledged weapons to help Ukraine counter Russian attacks. Russia, in response, expressed concern and stated it is assessing measures to counter NATO's support for Ukraine. Marwa Blaiwa reports.
During the NATO summit in Washington, a renewed commitment to support Ukraine has gained momentum. NATO members have pledged to confront Russia and provide Ukraine with military and financial aid, worth at least 40 billion euros over the next year. This support coincides with the announcement of the delivery of the first batch of American-made F-16 fighter jets to Ukraine.
I can't share the route of F-16's jets. When we see them in Ukrainian skies, I think all questions will be answered. First, we promise that summer 2024 F-16s will be fighting in Ukrainian skies. This promise is fulfilled. Second, this is just the first wave. We need more jets.
While the summit was an opportunity to bolster Western financial and military support for Kiev, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky's primary objective was Ukraine's accession to NATO. Diplomats affirmed that NATO members agree Ukraine is on an irreversible path toward joining the alliance. Meanwhile, Russia closely monitors the summit's developments. The Kremlin views the support for Kiev as NATO's involvement in the conflict and has announced measures to address what it considers a serious threat.
It is evident that the alliance is pursuing one of its primary objectives, which is to weaken Russia and inflict a strategic defeat upon it. We must thoroughly analyze the decisions made during the discussions and carefully scrutinize the text of the adopted declaration. This poses a grave threat to our national security. It will necessitate well-planned, coordinated, and effective response measures from us to deter NATO.
Despite the announcement of air defense systems and a pledge of continued support for Ukraine, observers doubt that the final statement of the summit will outline a clear path or timetable for Kiev's NATO membership. Alliance members are wary of admitting a country currently embroiled in a conflict with major powers.
Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan told Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky that Turkey is continuing its efforts to end the Ukraine-Russia war with a just peace at the NATO summit on Thursday. Erdogan told Zelensky that Ankara had begun to revive the Black Sea Grain Initiative, adding that he is ready for any initiative, including mediation, to lay the groundwork for peace, according to Reuters news agency. Chinese official rejected on Thursday an accusation from NATO members who said that Beijing has become a decisive enabler of Russia's war in Ukraine. Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Lin Jian at a press briefing in Beijing said a declaration issued on Wednesday by NATO members was filled with Cold War mentality and belligerent rhetoric. Lin made his remarks in response to a media question on China-related content in the NATO declaration released on Wednesday.
The NATO Washington Summit Declaration hypes up tensions in the Asia-Pacific region. It's permeated with Cold War mentality and belligerent phrases, and its China-related content is full of bias, defamation, and provocation. We strongly deplore and firmly oppose it, and have lodged solemn representation with NATO. The NATO's clamors of China's responsibility over the Ukraine crisis are groundless and malicious. China's objective and just position and constructive role in the Ukraine crisis have been widely recognized by the international community. Without any evidence, the NATO has continuously spread false information fabricated by the United States, blatantly vilified China, sowed discord between China and Europe, and undermined China-Europe cooperation.
That concludes tonight's program. If you missed any part of it, check it on our social media platforms. Thank you for tuning in and have a good night.